So good afternoon, everyone. Almost evening right now. So yep. So good evening then. Good evening from Bali. This is Vivi. I'm Vivi from concierge manager from OXO Living. So more than welcome. It's a warm welcome for all of you to joining us in this webinar, which is the Bali's top investment location in 2023. So many of you asking me lately about like Vivi, where's the top locations and then the upcoming locations for investment in Bali after the pandemic. So here we are. So we aim this webinar will give you a very great insight for you for the current potential investment in Bali after the webinar for you all. So without further ado, I will introduce Johannes here. He's here with us. He is the founder and then the CEO of OXO Living. Hi, Joe.
Hello everyone. Hi, thanks, Vivi.
All right, so before we start, so I would like to inform you about our house rules tonight. So first, there will be several voting in the middle of the session. So please give your participation, of course. And then the second of all, there will be the Q&A sessions at the end of the sessions. So please write down all your questions in Q&A chat box, and then we will answer it after that. All right, cool. Are we good? Then we can start. Right? Okay. Joe, without any further ado, just tell me, like, what is the current conditions in Bali after 1 year COVID?
I've put together a little document just to visually help a little bit with some of the answers and some of the, I guess, points that we want to make tonight. Let me put this slide up here. And this is mainly for the people who haven't been in Bali. I know a lot of you, I just checking the names, some of you haven't been to Bali recently. So to give a little bit of background, for sure, Bali is back. I mean, I've been here during the pandemic and also after the pandemic pretty much all the time. And we have seen all the things coming back, the good and the bad and the ugly sometimes. So for sure, tourists are back. All the F&B and all the activities in Bali are back. Beaches are back. So when you think back, it was only 2nd of February. So a year and 1 month, pretty much exactly, since Bali reopened. And when we look at the numbers, tourist arrivals are now at 2 million in 2022. Which is about a third of the all-time high back in 2019. But it's significant up, of course, in 2021 when Bali was closed, where we had pretty much nothing, and in 2020 with 1 million. So tourist arrivals are back to about 1/3 of the all-time high. I want to stress that because when you look at some of the revenue numbers I'm going to show later on, it's going to be quite interesting to see what it actually means in terms of the number of people who have come versus some of the revenues that are being made in some of the different areas. 1 point or 2 points to note is I would say that Bali is actually very resilient. I think we have seen that now with this bounce back. After COVID, the same happened in Gunung Agung with the Gunung Agung eruption, and also with the Bali bombing back in 2002 and 2005. So Bali is very resilient. I think I just want to put that message out there, and it's pretty clear to see how quickly Bali has bounced back. And also, I mean, the TripAdvisor has just come out with the latest awards in 2023. One of the top destinations, Destin Asia, Travel Leisure, and some others have voted Bali as a top destination in the world. And I think we're very fortunate to have that, and to see how quickly Bali is bringing back tourists and also activity.
Yeah, that's cool though. I mean, like Bali is really coming back, which is a great idea for us as well. And just wondering, like, is there any impact theme or anything that as our investor here is to be concerned with, or any looking out for?
Yeah. So I've put together a couple of what I call impact themes. They're not in particular order, but they are definitely something to be aware of when you look at either coming to Bali to live or to invest or both. Number one, I think we're seeing increasing density, especially in the area from the airport all the way to Canggu and Preganan. We see more and more population and activity, both from a tourism perspective, but also from a residence perspective. And that has has changed a lot in terms of the actual properties that are being built. we're seeing more and more smaller unit sizes. I mean, when we started building townhouses back in like 3 years ago during COVID, we were pretty much the only ones who were focusing on smaller dwellings. And now this has pretty much become the standard in this area. So there's a lot of apartments and smaller townhouses being developed, and that's something to be aware of. On the probably more the negative side, I mean, we've got a picture here from the shortcut coming over from Umalas to Brava, and that's basically a daily sight. It's really horrific in the Canggu area, and this is literally a couple of days ago. So we're talking March and February, which usually normally is a very low season. So traffic in the Canggu area all the way to Seminyak is actually very, very difficult. And that's something to be aware of. I mean, I've got a friend, he owns a restaurant close to Atlas, and he said, my bookings are down by 40%, not because of, not enough visitors or guests, but simply because they get stuck in traffic and have to cancel last minute. So it's something to be aware about this area. The other thing is, why is all of that happening? I think there's probably one major trend, which I would say is semi-permanent residence. What's happened during COVID is two things. One, people learned to work from anywhere. And secondly, people have chosen Bali as the destination to be, at least in a medium or semi-permanent basis. And what that meant is that even in January, February, which is low months, there's a lot of people in Bali. They're living here, they're staying here for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, and are semi-permanent residents. And on top of that, for sure, we have tourism that's coming back, both internationally, but also especially powered by the pandemic domestically. There were a lot of B number plates in Bali during COVID, and that meant that a lot of people from Jakarta or Surabaya rediscovered their own islands and traveled domestically, which again, increased, I think, traffic to Bali.
Yeah, definitely. I can tell, the congestions around Canggu is definitely getting crazier right now, day by day. And what do you think? Is there any upcoming area or any potential area that we can develop for, for investment point of view? But wait, Joe, before you answer, I just want to know about, for all of your perspective, I will bring a quick vote for you on the screen. So where do you think the upcoming area is going to be in Bali for investment after the COVID? So please clicking on the answers through your screen, and then we will see. Wow, fantastic. So it's around Canggu, Bukit. Some of you like Ubud, Jimbaran.
Prerenan, Sesse is leading with 55%.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Okay, so I think it's like it.
Prerenan
is the winner.
Yeah, so I will share you the result then. So most of you are thinking about Bukit or Uluwatu, and then still Canggu as the upcoming area. So what do you reckon, Joe?
Let me show you a little map of Bali. Let me just Prerenan is the winner actually. Now finally, Prerenan Sesse is the winner from you guys, which funny enough is quite aligned with some of the thoughts that I have. Before we get into investment locations, let's define a little bit what we mean by that, because I think there's we often see the billboards in Bali, 10% to 30% ROI. To me, it's quite questionable and quite varied. So let's quickly define what do we actually mean by that. First of all, I think, things to consider are for sure rental yield and also capital gains. Often people look at, mesh it all up into one, and there's lots of capital gains in a short period of time, but maybe that's not sustainable over a longer period of time. Same with rental yields, they can spike, but then, areas die down and yields are dropping. So that's one point to connect, to remember. The other area is inclusions for RI, taxes, management fees. If you self-manage it, you might get a much higher RI than, having a management company, etc. So bear that in mind. And then short versus long term, for sure. I mean, we all know Canggu is a very hot area. Also, the south of Bali is very hot at the moment. But can that be sustained over time? And do you get the capital gains that you might be looking for? And then other things to consider for investors are lifestyle and risks. Lifestyle, you might have a great investment property, but you never want to stay there. And if you're coming to Bali, say 3 months a year, you might want to stay in your own unit. So consider that as well. What are the facilities? Do you want to be in Canggu right now with traffic and a lot of people outside your doorstep, or you do want to be a bit further away and maybe look more at long-term growth and capital gains as opposed to immediate rental return? And finally, I think risk is quite important because in Bali there are a couple of rezonings going on, so that's definitely something to consider. Traffic is another one. What we're seeing now in Canggu is pretty intense. And also, COVID in a way opened a lot of eyes because, you might have, say, invested in Lembongan or Penida, which was completely cut off during COVID, whereas areas like, Canggu or even Seminyak still or Umalas were for sure, attracting long-term renters and managed to get, say, 6-7% a return, per year. Even during a period of crisis. So these are things that you should consider before, just talking about investment opportunities or ROI. And then there's other things like infrastructure, location, and revenue. And these are sort of the 3 areas that I looked at. Most of you know that in northwest of Bali, Paramount Studios is apparently, looking at a major investment project there. The MOU has been signed apparently in August last year. And now the negotiations are getting to final points, but Paramount Studio has a bad track record of following through on some of those projects, so it's definitely questionable. But if that's something of interest to you, if you're up in Pamutaran or any of those, I think that might be something you think, okay, to have a closer eye on. The other one is the toll road that's coming over from Java all the way to Denpasar. And that will open up a lot of the areas on the west coast of Bali. So if this is an area that you might be interested in, I would definitely follow that. We can put a link into the document later on. There's a very good report on all the infrastructure developments of Indonesia, and there's detailed status updates on that toll road. It's at the moment, as far as I know, in final tender stage. So it's been signed off and it's now in final tender stage. So that's definitely an area to look into. We see some of the projects already happening there, or even resorts popping up, like Lost Lindenberg, which is a very beautiful resort on the west coast in the middle of nowhere right now. But that will change once this toll road is coming in. And then in terms of location, I think it's everyone who knows Bali knows that Jimbaran and Sanur are probably, one of the best locations from the airport, easily accessible through the toll roads. And those 2 areas should definitely not be overseen, although neither Jimbaran nor Sanur have ever really taken off. There's a lot of development happening in Jimbaran now with Jimbaran Hijau, and there's also Mayo Clinic, coming into Sanur. But we haven't seen the big spikes in terms of, numbers and revenues in those areas. And then probably the most logical one is revenue. I'll show you some charts in a second, but revenue-wise, the top areas are Seminyak, Canggu, and then Uluwatu being in the Bukit area, and then also coming from a very low base, Nusa Lembongan and Nusa Penida. Let me go to the next slide. I'll show you some of those numbers here. You can see here quite nicely, actually, from a top revenue perspective to, going lower and lower. Seminyak is leading here, Canggu being second. And then Mengwi, there's only data since July 22, so very recently. But very interesting, it's rating number 3 in terms of revenue per unit. And this is going across all units from 1-bedroom to 4-bedroom or 5-bedroom in a median dollar bracket. So definitely an area to look out for. And I will go into this a little bit later. And then Nusa Dua, pretty stable, actually, and then coming back now a little bit more, of course, after COVID. But we can see the drop during COVID and now coming back up. What you see, for example, is Seminyak is almost back to the levels it was before. I think it's about 28% lower. Whereas some of them, say, for example, Jimbaran, especially the smaller ones. Let me go the next slide. The smaller ones, like Lembongan, is actually higher than pre-COVID. So I think it is up, I think, almost 50%. The same with Nusa Penida. So some of these areas have come back really, really strong. Usually what's happened there is during COVID, a lot of development was happening there. And I think there's new properties coming to the market and of course, promotion, etc. So these areas are definitely something to look out for if you like that sort of island investment. Let me show you this. I think this is basically the same data, but cut slightly differently. I compared here the 2019, the full year average rates compared to 2022. Now, remember, Bali only opened in February, so and then it took probably until the summer to really kick in. But the revenue per month for an average unit is coming back pretty strong in some areas, like Lembong, and as we said earlier, is more than before. Let me just press this one here. It's actually up 39%. And then we have also Kuta's come back. It's mainly because of the Australian tourism. A lot of Australians have come back who've been locked away in Australia for quite a while. And then Nusa Penida is up 60% pre-COVID. It's quite a lot. And then the Bukit as well. I mean, the Bukit, there's been a lot of developments in the Bukit. A lot of people from Canggu have moved down to the Bukit during the pandemic. And it's been developed, restaurants moving down, the likes of Masons have moved down, and, cafes who've been doing well in Canggu have moved down to the Bukit. And you can see that here in those numbers. Canggu is pretty much par with what it was before, Seminyak a little bit down. So this is more the revenue perspective, but of course that's looking back. It doesn't really tell us much about where we're going. And here I've got a slide a little bit more in detail that will show you, I guess, what I think where the main hotspots are. So for sure, the Bukit and the islands of Bali, Nusa Lembongan, are interesting investment opportunities. The thing is, neither of them have actually a lot of investment products as such, that people can invest in, unless you are, say, developing yourself, you're buying land yourself and developing, those lands yourself. Same in Nusa Lembongan. I personally I'm not a big fan of those two areas simply because Nusa Lembongan is difficult to build. It's just logistically quite difficult. But if that's something you want to take on, it's definitely an area I would look out for. Same with the Bukit. It's beautiful down there. There's issues with water and there's also issues with traffic, especially in the Ungasang area. But if that's something you can work with, I think it's definitely an area I would look into. Where we are focusing at OXO is more where the main population in Bali is, and we see an interesting sort of trend here. I call it the burn. It started in Kuta, it moved to Legian, it moved to Seminyak, and now we're in Canggu. And I call it the burn because in a way, what's happening is properties get very, very hot in those areas, and then they start to sort of, turn into ashes, if you like. You've seen that in Kuta and Legian, particularly, during COVID, it was very terrible to see what was going on. But having said that, it's coming back, maybe in a new form, hopefully in a new form, and hopefully in a better form. But the trend is definitely up the coast to the west side, so northwest side. And I think a lot of you were saying Sese. I completely agree. I mean, Sese has just rezoned a lot of land, and a lot of investment is going into Sese, and it's definitely the next hotspot, alongside with Kabakaba. They call it the Mengwi area, actually, which is not really true because I think Sese is not part of Mengwi, or maybe it is. But it's this next spot up from Prerenan. And we also see Kedunggu. Kedunggu has been doing really well. The prices has doubled pretty much in the area, and it's really developing a nice little community down there. And it's almost leapfrogged Chimagi and Nyani, and things are happening there. Now, so this is, I guess, where the trend goes. I think you guys are pretty much on the spot. I think it actually goes also past Kedunggu. There's some new projects happening there. But this is, I guess, the area that I would be looking out for, and trying to find, even inland, Buit, Kabakaba is definitely an area to look out for.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting though. I mean, like I can tell that the trend is right now is driven to the west. So, but what's happening there? I mean, like, is there something that we need to pay attention on it, or any kind of development that you are offering?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at what we are doing, I have the arrow here somewhere. Let me check. Yeah, so this is the area where we are focusing on pretty much exclusively now, and we have been focusing on that for the last year. It's an area called Nyani. For those who don't know Nyani or don't know anything about it, at the moment, when you go there, there's a couple of villa developments going on there. There's horse stables going on there. And if you drive there with your motorbike or your car, you probably wouldn't see much. But what's happening behind the scenes in Nyani is something pretty extraordinary. And I guess this is why I personally and we at OXO are very attracted to this area. And if you're in Bali, you've probably heard about it, but if you're not, you probably wonder what it is. Now, the project is called Nuanu. You might have heard the name if you live in Bali. If not, I strongly recommend you have a look, and I'll give you a little bit of an insider sort of information about it. Nuanu is a project that started about 2.5 years ago. It's probably the most exciting and largest alternative infrastructure project in Bali, with a beachfront land of about 50 hectares. The vision, and this is, I guess, why I'm personally really excited about it, is very unlike to what we have seen in say in Canggu or in Seminyak, or even in Kedunggu, with Ciputra moving in there, building like 500 townhouses, etc. The vision is focused around 4 main pillars. One is education, sustainability, social impact, and cultural impact. So it's a project that is, I wouldn't say a not-for-profit project, although a lot of the profits go to the local community, but it's really a project that tries to show that it's, there's different ways to live in Bali and different ways to do things. What's being created right now, and I've got a couple of pictures here to show you. So there's different parts to it. There's retail, there's festivals and events, there's communities, there's a university coming, there's schools and learning coming, there's retreats coming, and then of course there's F&B coming. All of this in this 50-hectare precinct. So it's really an event and activity precinct that we see coming behind the scenes at the moment. This is what it looks like at the moment. There's a lot of construction there, there's cranes there. You probably wouldn't be able to get in if you haven't an appointment, but if you are interested, please let us know, and we can arrange some tours to give you a tour on what's going on there. But effectively, what's happening is restaurants, event spaces, education facilities, community housing, a huge wellness center, an alternative beach club, primary and secondary school, medical facilities, a park, walking tracks. The whole area will be combustion free. So again, trying to avoid some of the mistakes that are happening in Canggu. And, the event is already activated. I mean, there was an event going on last year, Suara Festival, which is now repeated again in May this year. I think it's 15th of May. About 6,000 people are expected per day. You're welcome to join. Just Google it, Suara Festival, and you'll find out more about what's going on there. Now, for us personally, for me personally, I think it's a great thing that's happening in Bali. It is for sure a bit of a social experiment. It is something that is new and is pushing the boundaries. And it's a new destination in Bali that not many people know about. But for us, I think it is definitely something that we have an eye on and we are involved in.
Yeah, I mean, this is massive. I mean, Nuanu is very massive and progressively appealing for us, though. But what are you doing there as an OXO living? So what are you doing here? I mean, is there any contribution for you in this particular Nuanu project?
Yeah. So we started talking to Nuanu about a year ago. I was fortunate to meet with Sergey and Vadim and all the team and the founders behind Nuanu. And what we have to understand is that Nuanu is really call it a big activity experience zone. And there's not a lot of accommodation actually planned within the precinct of the 50 hectares. So what we have been doing is looking at outside of Nuanu. So we've looking at how we can do some more accommodation infrastructure that will support the event, also will support the events and all the activities. When you think about it right now, there's, say, in May this year, there's, say, 6,000 people going to Nuanu per day. And there's probably about, 10, 20 villas, in the area where you could potentially stay. So we are looking at 6 major projects that we have identified. They're all focusing on different market segments and different audience groups and also different timeframes. The first project is called Ecoverse, and then there's some other projects that will be coming online over the next months and years. And the purpose of those projects is ultimately to help provide accommodation infrastructure in the area. And what will happen as well is it will sort of close the gap between Kedungu and Sese and some of the areas that are growing into this sort of western part.
That's cool. That's cool. And then what is Ecoverse, Joe? Can you tell us more? Like, we're pretty curious about that, though.
Yeah, of course. So Ecoverse, it's a project. It's a collaboration between Nuanu and OXO. That's why it's called OXO Ecoverse Nuanu. It's a resort, a neo-luxury. We call it a neo-luxury resort with very different residence types. So we will have a new version of our townhouses. There will be apartments. There will be penthouses. But what's going to be quite different to all the things we've done before is there are a lot of facilities and new services that we are starting to introduce. There'll be a clubhouse, studio, gym, saunas, wellness areas, underground car parking. We'll have electric vehicles that will be shared, and also sort of latest technology inside all the different units. It's more or less a evolution of what we have been doing with injection of some of the Nuanu spirit and of course, much more focus on sustainability. The mission of the project is in a way to show to investors that we can generate attractive returns and, of course, deliver, great experiences for our guests, but at the same time also, develop properties with a real purpose and, the future in mind, sustainability in mind and the planet in mind. So we're doing kind of what we've been doing before, but we're doing it in a new way and in a more, I guess, evolved and exciting way.
That's amazing. When it's launched, I mean, like, is it going to be publicly launched for that?
Yeah, we're launching it in, I think it's 29th of May. The project will launch 29th of May to the public. If anyone is interested, let us know. We're happy to do another, seminar or webinar like this. We can show you before it launches. It will launch, of course, to, I guess, the OXO community first. At, of course, different prices than after the public launch. And also, if you're just interested, we're very happy to share, what's actually happening. Also, if you're interested to know more about Nuanu, we can organize tours there or any sort of information that you might not be able to get on the website or sort of that is publicly available. So we're very happy to help out.